Hi everyone. Just by a show of hands, who prefers English?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Alright, so it looks like we're going to be doing it in English.
Thank God. I actually prepared the presentation in English. Not fully. Okay, so the first session today is going to be on competition preparation. So it's basically preparing you for the competition, letting you know what you should be doing before the competition, and letting you know the rundown, basically day by day, of what happens at the competition. Again, just by a show of hands, who's fully new to the competition this year? Okay,
That's a good amount.
so this will be very interesting for you to know for your first year, and also to take with you back to your teams, and to keep doing year after year as you continue to participate in CRC. So the first part of it is going to be on the preparation. Basically 10 tips on what to do before the competition leading up to it. We're a month away, exactly on the date. So this will be very crucial in the next coming weeks. And then the second part will be on what happens on the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of the competition.
Okay, so, got locked down. Okay. So the first, and I think one of the biggest struggles, the first thing is organization is key. Because if you're not organized within your team, and if everybody doesn't know what they're doing, and they don't know when to do it, things get very out of hand. Because if you have people that know what they're doing, but they don't know when to do it, things get done in the wrong order, and then next thing you know, your kiosk is built, but you don't have a robot.
So some of the things that you'll see throughout the presentation are what to do and when. So you can take note of those, and this will also be made available afterwards. So no troubles there. Whoever was at the team management presentation workshop a few months back, one of the first ones in November, you'll know that we mentioned you should have captains for different components of the competition. And those people are really the ones who would be delegating all of these tasks and making sure that they're all done quickly, timely, and I'm one of the people who likes lists. So lists, and more lists. One of the greatest ways to get organized is to make a list of everything you need to do and everything you need to bring and when those need to be ready. So what I can suggest, because as you may all know, you all make a list for something, and if you're scrambling to do it at the last minute, you tend to forget things. So I would suggest starting to make your list now, and whether it's digital or on paper, add to it as you go along. So if you think of something, add to it at that point. So start making your list all together, and then as you keep thinking of things, you just add them up, and you'll find out that the day before the competition, you should have a pretty full and concise list.
And you can take advantage of the rooms that your schools have provided for you. If you have whiteboards, you can make a big list on the whiteboard that's accessible and visible to all, because again, if you're not organized or if only one person knows what's on the list, then it's a bit hard for everybody else to know what's going on as well.
And one of the major principles of project management is a 3-2-1 rule. Basically, every time you do a big project, 3 days, 2 days, and the day before that launch of the project or whatnot, you always review everything. So take the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of the week of that competition to review that list again. As a team, make sure everything's in order, make sure you're kind of prepared to load your truck. And the morning that you load your truck, on the Thursday morning, check things off your list as you go along, and then at the end, when you're done loading the truck, you should essentially have everything checked off.
So tip number 3, which is part of the rule book, read the evaluation criteria. At the end of the rule book, there is an appendix with all the rubrics for all the judging that we do in the competition for kiosk, video, website, etc. They won't tell. They'll tell you not only what you need to do, but also what we're looking for in terms of primary, secondary, and if applicable, tertiary so you can know what to prioritize and things like that.
Yep.
I have a question about like the rubrics there. The tertiary is for like the finals, like the final 5 teams, right?
No, it's
Not
for all of
necessarily.
them.
Okay.
So you get judged on the entire rubric.
Yeah.
Basically, you pass at the preliminary rounds. You'll be judged on all of the criteria, and the top 4 from each group. So there's 3 groups. There's 26 schools this year. 25. 7? Oh yeah, sure. So there's 27 schools. There's 3 pools, which means 9 in each pool. The top 4/5, if it's tight, will move to the final round. So you get judged on all of those criteria in the preliminary,
And then judged again.
exactly. If you're in the top 4, you'll go to finals, and you're judged again on the full criteria.
Because what I remember reading on the rubric is like the tertiary like separates, like really pushes the teams apart. So is that like what you see first, or is that like what you look at last? Or what the judges would look at last?
It's basically what will set you apart. So to make it to the finals, you likely have to have the tertiary. And then to be placed in the top 3, you likely have to have the best tertiary ones.
It's like one of the good examples is with the website judging, where on your website, if you and another school are completely equal on everything else, and your website is, say, hosted on, what's the name? WordPress, and the other school made theirs from scratch, that would be like a tertiary aspect, and they would get the extra point. So it's really tertiary would be the last things that they look at. It's primary is just basic. Is there a kiosk? You know, is it safe? What's mentioned on there? Secondary would be, is it inviting? You know, the presentation and all that. So you get judged twice, and twice they go through all of them.
Keep in mind that the way it works in CRC is a little different from other competitions in the sense that it's not point based. So you don't get a score on like 20 or 30 or 100. It's really based on the opinion of the judges. So we have expert judges in the finals. In the preliminaries, we have teachers. So they could either be teachers from Vanier or teachers from the participating schools that will essentially judge you during the preliminary rounds. And then in the finals, it's fully experts. So for robot design and robot construction, all of them are either engineers or computer science workers and qualified. And in the kiosk, most of them are like art teachers or kind of those multimedia experts. So that's essentially how it works for the judging. So it's not point-based. You can't say, oh, well, that team got, like, we're tied. It's not based on points. It's really based on what set you apart and what the judges think. Just a point, you should check out Rule 4.1.10. It tells you exactly what you need to be certified in your kiosk. And if you don't have those, your kiosk will not be certified. And you have 7 hours from the time you arrive at the competition to set up your kiosk and be certified.
You guys that just came in, you've went on. Are you guys okay with English, or would you like English? Yeah. You okay?
Tip number 4, load your truck strategically. So as I said, you'll have a specific time slot where you will be arriving at Vanier the day of the competition on Thursday. It will be sent to the mentor or responsible teacher of your school a few days leading up to the competition.
It will also show up in Manager if you'd like to look at it there.
So keep in mind that you'll have a limited time window at the dock to get everything off your truck. And like I said, you'll have 7 hours to actually build your kiosk from that time slot. So make sure you strategically load your truck so that you can strategically unload it. Pack flat things first, oddly shaped things on top of the flat things. And lastly, something that I learned through my various competitions with CRC, if possible, try to transport your robot in a car and not in the truck. The robots are fairly sensitive the way they're built. and with the roads in Quebec, we never know. So you're probably better off trying to put it in like an SUV or like the backseat of a car or something. Although you can also put it in your truck, just make sure it's...
If your truck has a bench seat, you can put it next to your favorite t-shirt, it'll stay warm. But for the loading of the truck, I do recommend you look up just basic YouTube videos like how to load a U-Haul. It'll explain a little bit about the weight distribution and keeping those types of things in mind. And also, I do highly, highly recommend look up how to use a ratchet strap properly, because year after year, things go wrong because people don't understand how they work, and I'm tired of teaching people. You had a question, Josh? Or?
About like the day of the competition. Like, because we're gonna try and get in as early as possible, so like you can done earlier so we can probably help guide.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Tip number 5, pick your key players before the competition. The competition is a place to have fun, but it's also very stressful in the sense that you've worked so many weeks and so many months towards something that you always want it to go well, so your level of stress always elevates. So picking the key players before the competition is always best. These are some key players that that we've marked down. So pilots and co-pilots. There's no limitation as to the number of pilots and co-pilots that you can have within your team. Obviously, only one pilot and co-pilot.
On the playing field, you can have one of each.
Correct. But if you want to interchange, one game it's one pilot and one co-pilot, the other game it's another pilot and co-pilot, the pilot and co-pilot switch places every round. Like, it's really up to you. We don't put a limitation on that. It's just that each game you have one pilot and co-pilot on the playing field.
Generally, strategically, whoever is most comfortable and performs the best would stay the pilot, but that's for your team to decide.
Yeah. The next one is the kiosk presenter, and again, this can be one or multiple people. It's the ones that will be presenting your kiosk to the judges and to the public in general. These should be people who have worked actively on the kiosk, who understand your theme, why you've built it a certain way, why you put your workspace in a certain place, etc. And you can be cross-functional. And we know that some teams, you do everything, and there's other teams that some people focus on kiosk, others focus on robot, website, video. That being said, try to make sure you have maybe 2 people that are ready to present the kiosk at all times.
And also make sure those people are either bilingual or one can do English and one can do French, because that is something that you are judged on.
So you can present in whatever language you feel most comfortable in, but the judges can also ask questions in whatever language they feel most comfortable in. That said, if they ask you a question in French and you're more comfortable responding in English, you can do that. And they are briefed beforehand that can happen, so you should not lose to that effect. But it is always best that you have someone bilingual, just in case even the general public passes by and they can't speak English, they can't speak French. You need to be able to communicate with them. Same thing for robot presenters. So we have 2 components of the robot, right? Robot design, robot construction. You'll see in the presentation skills presentation afterwards what is different between the 2 presentations. But basically, your robot presenters should be the ones who have actively worked on the robot, who understand all of the components of the robot, how it was built, why it was built, what materials were used, what are the game strategies that are being used, etc. The next one, someone who is responsible for audio-video equipment. So if you have audio-video equipment in your kiosk, put someone in charge of bringing all of the necessary adapters, equipment for that day.
This also ties into your lists. Make sure if you're bringing a computer screen, whatever, make sure that you have your power cords and your wires or your mounting stands, whatever you need, because I've seen a lot of teams show up with computer screens and a computer, and oh no, we can't plug it in.
So keep in mind that you have 3 things that we give you for your kiosk: a table, 2 chairs. Okay, so 4 things. A table, 2 chairs, and an outlet. That's all you get.
And the outlet, just to remind everybody, is 2 normal 110 plugs, 15 amps total, because we've had that question.
You guys obviously have to eat throughout 3 days. So someone who is responsible for ordering food or going to get food. Sometimes it may be your teacher, depending on what stage you're at in school. Sometimes it could be yourselves. Don't forget to eat. We've had a few people faint during competitions. Don't forget to eat.
Eat and drink. Carry around a water bottle if you need to. Make sure you stay hydrated, because it's...
Yeah, despite the signs, you are allowed to bring food into the gyms during the competition.
Yeah, just not on the other side where people are doing gym.
The next one may sound pretty cheesy, may sound kind of stupid to some of you. Make sure someone is responsible to make sure the batteries are always charged. So it sounds really stupid, but actually when I was in Sec 5, that was my job. And when you get to like games that you have every 10 minutes, you need to make sure that you have a constant rotation of batteries. And if everyone's focusing on the robot, fixing something that broke off during heat, then nobody's focusing on making sure that there's 2 batteries that are charged for your next one. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, because I got here late. Are we gonna have access to the presentation?
Yeah, they'll all be
They'll
posted.
be published after.
The video will also be published probably tomorrow.
Manager.
Yeah, we're on live. So.
Thank you.
I'm on.
You're not live, but
Oh.
Well, we're recorded.
yes.
And the next one, and just to make my life a lot easier, someone who is responsible for the submissions. So again, we'll go through that within this presentation. There are submissions before the competition, actually in 2 weeks from today.
Exactly 2 weeks. Make sure you submit it in 13 days so that you don't end up crying on the 27th.
And there are submissions at the competition, deadlines at the competition as well. So just keep that in mind. Make sure that someone is in charge of monitoring those times and actually making the submissions, especially for the one in 2 weeks. And a big note in bold, remember that even if you don't fall into one of these, there's always something to do with the competition. There's always some way in which you can help your team. So just make sure that everyone kind of feels included and involved within the competition.
All right, so tip number 6 would be all hands on deck. So the more people you can get to a certain degree, the better. Because when you have 7 hours to unload and set everything up, the kiosk might seem small or easy to do when you're at school, but when you actually have to put everything together and you have 3, 4, 5 other teams around you building at the same time, it gets pretty hectic. People forget things. It's not an easy task to do if you're not many people. So the more people you have, the better. So if you have some people that say have class on Thursday but don't have class on Friday, just keep that in mind, because if you're in a CJEP anyway, there's a good chance that not everybody can make it on Thursday morning, and Thursday morning is when those people that might not necessarily have a job are going to be very useful.
Also, don't forget that the work actually needs to be done by you guys, the students. So when we say the more manpower you get, the better, those are asking teachers to help you.
Or CRC members.
So try to get as many friends as possible. So any student in your school is basically allowed to participate in CRC. So if they just come and help you build your kiosk,
Yeah.
pretty good.
Take your friends from your classes that you don't have on Thursday morning, just take them with you. Share the love.
They do have to be from your school, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
How many people would you say too many to set up kiosk?
Is too many?
Yeah.
It depends on your kiosk. So for example, it really depends on the kiosk and it depends on the school. So just something I think of, Mac, so McDonald's, they're a team of like 60. There's maybe 20 people who work on kiosk, let's say, I'm just throwing, like they may have all 20 people setting up their kiosk, but there's always like they take a corner, right?
Yeah.
If your kiosk is smaller or bigger than that, you may need more or less people.
But to be productive, like if you have too many people in the kiosk for the set space that we have, it could be a little chaotic.
Mhm.
So what do you think from your experience with CRC in this competition
I-
is an ideal number of people?
I would suggest maybe around 5 to 10 people to set up everything like around. But then you always have like little gadgets and things
Yeah, all the
that can be
decoration.
placed, so that can also be a bit more people. I think if you're 5 to 10, you're pretty good. Even to unload the truck, you're pretty good.
Usually you need at least 3 people, like one person holding, 2 people to hold sections of wall and one person to screw or bolt them together. I'd say 3 to 4 is like the minimum that you would need. But one big mistake that I see a lot of teams doing is that they bring their walls and then they bring their tools and then they bring their robot and then they all have backpacks and jackets and they throw them in the middle of their 12 by 12 space and then they start building. Only bring your walls first, build your walls, and then fill up your kiosk, because building around all of your stuff is not productive, and you have a truck which is basically free storage. You have 7 hours. It'll be a lot easier if you build the walls or the structure anyway first and then bring everything in.
So just to note on that, in your initial unload slot, until everyone's had their time, you have a 30-minute slot to get the initial stuff out of your truck,
Yeah.
and then you have to vacate the front. But you can come back when the slots are done to bring the rest of your stuff in.
And just 2 seconds, just because I don't want to miss my my thought. Yeah, like Pat said, just leave everything, all of your personal belongings, to the point where even your jackets, leave them in the truck. It'll be cold the first time you take off your jacket. After that, it won't be cold.
When you're 30 people, 30 winter jackets stacks up pretty quick in a 12 by 12 space.
Leave them in the car, leave them in the truck, leave them wherever, but not in your kiosk area. Yeah.
I asked this question in the past. Is there any chance that you guys can ask Daniel to reserve truck spots in the parking? Because driving with a truck in that parking lot is a nightmare. I've done it a couple of times when it's full.
Yeah.
It's like when it's completely full and
Yeah.
trying to find a spot. It's a nightmare finding
You
parking.
It will not happen.
No.
Classes are going on and badminton trials are happening during the competition. Get here earlier than your slot and have someone keep your parking spot for you is the only thing I
Find a
could really
big
say.
construction cone and put it in the spot that you want the night
Parking lot's
before.
empty at 6:30. Nobody's there at 6:30. If you come after, it's full.
Yeah, because the first wave of classes.
Yeah.
So
People
like the
come for 6:30.
So the first move-in slot is at 7:30 in the morning, but you can show up earlier if you
Yeah.
want.
What time are you guys letting schools into the gym?
7:30. The doors are unlocked at 7:30. So if your time slot is at 7:30, we unlock the doors at 7:30, and you have until 8 to get the bulk of your things in, and then you have to wait till everybody else has their things in to move the rest.
Okay. Deadlines are important. So like we've been saying, don't forget you have deadlines before the competition. Again, in exactly 2 weeks from today. 2 weeks and 5 hours
Pretend
and
it's
35
13
minutes.
days, please.
So January 27th, 2020 at 11:59 p.m. That is your deadline to submit your website, your video, and your tutorial if you have one. It's also the deadline, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but to opt into the programming competition.
It is the deadline to submit your answers for the programming competition, which opts you into being part of the final competition during the actual games. You do
So-
not have to complete. Sorry, you
Yeah.
do not have to complete all of the questions, but you should earn yourself enough points to be over a certain threshold.
So that said, it will be through Manager this year. For those who have competed in the past, it was through a submission portal that was on the website. This year, because we have a true participant kind of platform, it will be through Manager that you will submit it. The link in and of itself should be up within the next week or so,
Week and a half.
so that you can start submitting. I strongly suggest that you submit as early as possible.
So the entire record of your submissions, anything late that you send through there will be recorded. So if you had a good link and then you put a bad link by accident at the end, don't freak out. We will have the original one as well.
And also make sure that any like YouTube links, things like that, are visible to us and they're not, say, private or locked or have a password, because if it's not visible to us, it's not useful to us.
Another tip is that you can submit as many times as you want until January 27th at 11:59:59. So if the submission portal opens next week, let's say Wednesday, and you submit on Wednesday, and then you make a change and you re-upload your video, you take down the other one, just resubmit the link. And we'll use the last one that is submitted, given it's a good link, right? So if by whatever reason it's a bad link, we'll use the previous version.
Which also means if you're panicking and you won't be done, submit something, because some points are better than nothing.
Same for the website.
That's it. It's better to submit a half-finished website than to panic and not submit any website.
Yeah. So that said, one other tip just for the video, make sure it's fully uploaded to YouTube before you submit the link. We have seen that the link changes between, like, let's say 50% uploaded and 100% uploaded, and your one that you submitted when it was at 50% is no longer good, so we don't have a video for you. So just based on what, oh, there's no whiteboard.
Did you still have that whiteboard marker?
That's fine. So just, oh.
Be very useful right now.
So, and I know we're being recorded, but I'll give you guys a little tip on how it works for submissions, because we have seen some schools not submit anything because they felt that it wasn't completely finished.
Big mistake.
So the way you're ranked is from 1 to the number of schools. So in this case, it's 27. Okay. So whoever submits something, if you're the best out of whoever submitted, you're in first place. If you're the second best, you're in second place, so on and so forth. Let's say only 20 schools submit a video. So the score goes from, the rank goes from 1 to 20. The 7 schools that didn't submit get 0.
So automatically, by submitting something that's half done, you go from last place to 20th or 15th or whatever.
So it makes a pretty huge difference depending on how many people actually submit something.
Going from 0 points out of 100 to, say, 20 points or 40 points can mean the difference between maybe winning overall or not.
People have lost overall because they have not submitted a website.
Yeah.
That is true. It happened 3 years ago. The team would have won, but instead came in second place because they didn't submit a video. So submit anything, like literally anything.
We won't judge you. We've done this. We know it's difficult.
You'll get whatever, you'll get last place, but it won't be a 0. Yeah.
Like, it's not like completely finished, but it's like half finished, and you get like 0.5 or a point.
You're judged on whatever you have.
Oh, yeah.
So you won't get 50%, because it's not like a test or anything like that, but you'll be judged on what you have. So the rubrics that we mentioned earlier in the appendix of the rulebook, at the end of the rulebook, the judges would go through that and look for what they're supposed to be looking for as if their website was finished. You would just obviously get less points, but that you could still get 70 points, you know, it's variable.
You still might get, I saw your hand. You still might only have responded to the primary criteria, and so you might still be in last place, but you'll be in rank 20 instead of rank 0.
Yeah.
So it gives you more points for the overall.
Because you could technically even have a not finished website that places a bit better than another school's finished website, just looking at the criteria.
And let's say after the submission deadline, if it's half done and we end up finishing it, there's no purpose of finishing it because it won't be looked at after the deadline?
No, it won't be looked at after the 27th. Well, I mean, it will be looked at to judge, but we won't take into consideration any changes that have been made after the 27th.
I believe we take the snapshot on the 27th and give that to the judges, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. You can finish it just out of pride if you want to, or to say your website to present in your kiosk, but it won't give you any added bonus points.
I didn't say somewhere that you have to upload it by the 27th, but it has to be made public like a week later. Or
By the first day of the competition, it needs to be made public.
On the 13th
so
is when it needs to be public.
if you don't want the competing schools to see your website, not that it really
Okay.
matters because
So-
everybody submitted. But if for whatever reason you don't want a competing school to see your website because you have prototypes of what your robot looks like, you don't want them to
Yeah.
copy you or whatever, you can always like privatize it, but you do have to make it fully public by the Thursday at, I think it's 8 a.m. So the 13th of February at 8 a.m. Your video on YouTube and your website need to be made public. Keep in mind your tutorial needs to be on your website as well. So you can't just submit a tutorial like a Word document. I mean, you can, but the tutorial
document
also
has
needs
to
to
be
be
on
on
the
your
website.
website.
And just a little point that came up earlier in the day, the tutorial doesn't necessarily have to be about robotics. It can be on anything, but it is useful if it has robotics related info.
It could be on how to create a website, how to create a page, how to correctly do lighting during a video. Like it
My
could be
suggestion
about
was
anything.
how to make ramen noodles, but that's a much better suggestion. Yes.
Is the tutorial not a video?
It
Well,
doesn't
you-
have to be.
Okay, but it could be.
It could be.
Okay.
It could be in, I think there's 3 formats. There's a video, a web link, and a PDF. Just no Word documents per se, because it will screw up your format if it's opened in different
I think if you're making a
computers.
Word doc, save it as a PDF.
Okay.
Cool. Any other questions on deadlines?
Okay, so I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but I will. Read the rule book, because a lot of teams don't seem to read it and then ask questions that are easily searchable in the rule book.
Like, can I use these motors?
Yes. A little tip, I understand that the rule book is long. You don't necessarily have to read it all, not every member has to read the whole rule book, but at least a few members have to have read each part. Say, if you only do the robot, you don't necessarily need to read the other 30 pages of the rule book. I suggest reading all of it so that you're aware and you can maybe point out a mistake that happened by accident somewhere else. But reading the rulebook is very helpful because you could easily pick up some lost points that are lost because you didn't look up a certain rule. You can go on Google, open up the rulebook, and just Control F and search for a keyword, say, like motor or kiosk or electrical, and easily find what you're looking for afterwards. Because, that's easy points lost. It's like losing points on a test because you didn't write your name.
Keep in mind the longest sections of the rulebook are the game and the robot. Other than that, video I think is 2 pages, kiosk is 2 pages. Like it's really not that long to read. Tip number 9, speak to your partner before each heat. So I'd say since 2009, CRC has had collaborative games, which means you always work with someone, at least one person, if not more. So this year you're working with one person against 2 other people. And it's a game that is not like the previous CRC games in the sense that this is a very strategic game. It's a game of strategy, it's a game of agility. So make sure that you have certain strategies in mind that your robot can do, and work with the other team to figure out their strategies before each heat so that you can play together and not against each other and start fighting on the playing field.
You want to
when
know
you're
what your
supposed to work
teammates'
together.
strengths are. Because if you're both going for the same thing, it's not very useful.
Even more than telling them what your robot can do is telling them what your robot can't do. So some teams focus on certain items and can't do some other items. That's one of the most important things that your partner should know. Because if you base your strategy on something you can do and then something goes wrong on the playing field and you have to do something else but you can't actually do that, then you're in a position where both of you will not make a point because both of you can't do something. You can only do something if you're in a certain position and you can't get into that position now because one of your wheels broke. It's just very important that your partner knows what your robot can do and you should know what they can and can't do either.
It'll avoid a lot of unnecessary heartache and screaming if something goes wrong.
The last tip is to have fun. So, like we said before, the competition can be stressful. Make the most out of the 3 days that you're there and the days leading up to the competition. It's really a time for you guys to show off to your school, your competing schools, and visitors what you can do and what your school is capable of and what you guys are capable of. We get approximately 2,000 to 3,000 visitors during the competition. So that's 2,000 to 3,000 people that can see you throughout 3 days. So make the best of it. Go see the heats. The CRC is very, very focused on sportsmanship. Go cheer on your teammates as well as the other participants of the competition.
You had a question?
Is the health booth going to be back?
Yep.
The CRC hub will be back.
With the pens? With the cool pens now?
Maybe.
Maybe.
We might have cool mugs.
We have those ones already.
Limited edition. But for real, having fun is probably one of the more important tips besides read the rulebook. Because you'll be surprised at the friendships that you can make with this competition, which arguably is the best prize because I work one. But please don't just sit in your kiosk the entire time. The kiosk might be really cool, but if you have the chance, go out, socialize, go see the other teams, because you're all competing against each other, but at the end of the day, everybody else wants to have fun too.
And yes, the CRC hub will be back. So it is your single point of contact. Instead of running after people with these shirts, you can just go to the CRC hub and get all of your questions answered. So we'll have people there all the time. At least one person will be there all day Thursday, all day Friday, all day Saturday to answer any of your questions. We'll have TVs/projectors set up over there as well, running different items, so important times, judging, evaluation periods, the next games to come, etc.
What's currently happening on the playing field for the matches?
Also, if we're behind, or even if we're ahead of schedule, and hey, your team needs to be on the playing field right now, or you have an extra 20 minutes to fix your robot.
Yeah.
Is the robot certification going to be at the CRC hub again?
Yeah.
It is going to be near it.
Within the
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be like
It's not the same
Kiosk
spot,
kiosk.
it's off to the side.
okay.
You'll see the day of the competition, but
It's within
everything
the same,
CRC related
area.
will be within,
Right.
within eyesight.
Yeah.
What time does kiosk certification start?
7 hours after your arrival time. So we will come to you. If you are ready within 3 hours, feel free to come and find us. But we will come and find you within 7 hours after your arrival time to certify your kiosk. And again, I cannot stress enough to read 4.1.10. Tells you everything, what you have to bring. A first aid kit, minimum pairs of safety glasses, minimum pairs of gloves, everything like that.
Also, just a point touching on the first aid kit, just because you need a minimum of a first aid kit doesn't mean that you should stop there, because really a $10 first aid kit will work, yes, but it's one of those things that when you need it, you really need it, and it might be worth asking your teachers to give you $50, $60 to buy a nice first aid kit. There's a big difference between a cheap and a nice one.
Some members of the CRC team are also CPR and first aid certified. So if anything happens at the competition, go to the CRC hub. The person that's not injured, please.
Let the teacher know if you need to.
Let the teacher know. I'm pretty sure some, if not most of your teachers are first aid certified as well. But if they are not, if there's no one within your team, within the 5 people that may have been there at the incident, go to the CRC hub. Just mention to them that you need a first aid person, and
We'll figure it out.
they'll find someone for you.
Any other questions? Everybody understood? We've been clear as mud.
Wait, what's not clear?
You understood?
Yes.
Good.
That's the last tip. Now we'll go into the competition days. You'll see some of the things might be a little repetitive because we kind of went through a lot of details. But this is a rundown of what happens on each day of the competition. So the Thursday, like we've all said, in the morning, you arrive at your designated time slot and unload your truck. A very important note. If you are scheduled to arrive at 8:30 and you are not there at 8:30, 8:30, within reason there, don't show
Well,
up.
you can show up within your time slot, but if you show up after your time slot,
Correct.
If you have half an hour and you show up 45 minutes later,
you show up.
You'll get put to the end of the move-in
If you
schedule.
show up, if you have 30 minutes and you show up 15 minutes late, then you only have 15 minutes.
and keep in mind February, pretty much every year we have some sort of snow, ice, or rainstorm. So keep an eye on the weather, and if there's even a chance of a storm or something, leave 20 minutes early, because there's a very huge difference in traffic in Montreal. Or even the night before, or whoever's driving should check, say, the day before at the same time on Waze or Google Maps and see how long it takes approximately from your school. Say it takes 45 minutes, leave an hour early, just to be safe.
Also to note, you have 7 hours to build your kiosk from the time that we say in the time slot. So if you're scheduled to arrive at 8:30, well, you have 7 hours as of 8:30. So if you guys decide to show up at 10 o'clock, well, you have an hour and a half less.
Let's give a wonderful example here. Let's say your time slot is 8:15, and you decide to show up at 10. You can now only unload your truck at the end of all of the time slots, which puts you at unloading at 1:30 p.m.
So
You've
you
wasted 3 hours of your setup time by being late.
Because at the end of your 7 hours, the kiosk basically needs to be done. You can't really, like, you can do small things, but
You guys said when we bring the truck, we have half an hour to unload it when we're in the front.
Yeah. Or, well, we have different loading docks, so we'll have more than one person.
Yeah, so there's two or three trucks in the front at the same time. We're not sure yet. The slots are 45 minutes, and there's also one truck in the back. I'm trying to make the schedule based around the driving time from each of your schools to Vanier, so it makes a little bit of sense, not having someone wake up at 5 in the morning to get here.
Yep.
So I'm guessing you can't leave the truck in the parking lot the night before.
No, it actually specifically says that the parking lot has to be empty between 11 p.m. and 6
yeah,
a.m.
there's a big sign in the parking lot that says that. But you can show up at 1 in the morning if you want, when it opens.
So like Josh said, you can be here like at 6:30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you can worst case scenario, you can, I don't know, I think it's 12 to 6 or 11 to 5, something like that. You can deliver the truck here at 5 a.m. if you want to, and just come back using the metro or an Uber. But
That's a good idea.
yeah, it's whatever you guys feel like. Just make sure you show up when you're supposed to. That's all we want.
I recommend coming early. It's hectic when students start showing up.
Oh, whenever the competition's at Vanier, the unload is awful. The parking lot's full and everything.
And keep in mind, half of the parking lot, of that parking lot down there, is reserved for teacher parking.
Yeah, the first half towards
so
the gym is teacher
realistically,
parking.
all you have is the back, like the back. And if you want to unload from that parking lot, you're sending your students quite far.
Yeah, it's almost like a good half kilometer
Yeah.
walk almost. Imagine with 20-pound walls, that'll be fun.
Yeah, so all that to say, show up on time, leave early.
Do whatever you can,
Yes.
please. Help us to help you.
Exactly. Throughout the rest of the morning and the afternoon, you'll be setting up your kiosks, and you'll have kiosk certification 7 hours after you've set up your kiosk. And again, we will come to you. There will be CRC volunteers coming around and certifying your kiosk. New this year, for the teams and the students who have participated in the past, all judging used to take place on Fridays. We have moved one judging round to Thursday. It is the preliminary robot design. So not robot construction, but robot design. The decisioning and reasoning behind this is because showing up to the competition, you should have already determined what kind of design you should be looking at, and what kind of game strategies you will have. So again, we'll go through the presentation skills afterwards, but presenting robot design is very different than presenting robot construction. And you can and will be able to present robot design on Thursday. It is very much feasible. It is only the preliminary rounds, so the final rounds will still take place on Friday, along with the final rounds of construction and of
Well, the preliminary
preliminary and final of construction and of kiosk. So it'll give you a little more leeway also on the Friday to kind of breathe.
And also the group of people that sometimes are sitting around the robot, not necessarily part of the kiosk team, you'll give them something to do as well.
So all of those times will be coming out within the next few weeks as well. So along with the move-in schedule and everything like that, you'll kind of get everything before the competition, and you should really be just prepared at that time to present.
It should be on Manager, sent to your teachers, and I believe also on the website and maybe Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah, check our social media. Give us a like on Facebook while you're at it.
In the evening, as always, we have the opening ceremonies. So basically, for those who it's their first year participating, just a rundown, we basically put you in line with regards to your team numbers, so number 1 to 27, 2 members of your team with your robot, and you basically get announced one by one in front of whoever's there. And you do a little lap around the playing field. It's also time for the CRC to kind of present themselves, present the game, and we may have some members of Vanya actually also speak to you as usual. So it's basically it's about half an hour-ish.
And quick tip, if your robot is heavy, you are only 2 people. If you need to borrow some sort of a AV cart or something from your school, I would suggest that that's the time to have it, because if you're 2 people carrying, say, a 100-pound robot and you have to stand there for half an hour because things are going late or whatever, it gets pretty heavy, and you do not want to drop your robot during the opening ceremonies in front of everybody and break it. That is very embarrassing.
And not really good for your robot either. And then once that's done, we take a little maybe break of 10 minutes and the games begin. So you will be playing with your robot on Thursday evening. Any questions about Thursday? Yeah.
Just going on like past events, when do these games end the first night?
Usually around 9-ish.
Okay.
Ish.
Don't they start like 8:30?
No, they start? No, they start around 6.
Yes. I've been in this competition before.
Very
Usually around 9-ish. Give or
Or when
take.
they end?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions about Thursday? Sorry. No? Okay. Friday. So in the morning, you guys will arrive. The games start. The games usually start, and we haven't done the final game schedule, but let's say between 8 and 9-ish. 9:30-ish.
Yeah, usually it's like 8:30 to 9, and we open the doors at say 8. Usually have like half an hour to 45 minutes if you need emergency repair or something.
So the games will begin, and you basically play the entire day. Obviously at different intervals, but there's games going on from the morning until the evening. And to answer a question that may be coming, the games will end around 8:30, 9 o'clock at night.
And this is where those battery charging people and all the people that we mentioned earlier come into play.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, there's a question about the kiosk. When we show up, usually there's these metal barriers between each kiosk.
Yep.
Most teams end up just taking them out of the way because they're sort of like at the border where 12 by 12.
Mm-hmm.
They're
It
like
should-
flush 12 by
It
12.
should be exactly 12 by 12 in between. What I've seen happen before is schools build, say, 3 4-foot sections of walls, so it's 12 feet on each side, and then the back wall is also 12 feet, and they put on top. So you get, say your frame's made out of 2x4s, you get 2 times a 2x4 extra, so it's 7 inches extra, which would invade that space, but it should be 12 by 12 exactly. There are some teams or it's, say, a few inches too long. But
I just ended up taking that metal barrier out of the way because I'm not sure if it's exactly at where they meet or it's like a little bit of space.
There's like, that's your predetermined square.
Yeah, we kind of have to put them so that you know exactly where your boundaries are. The fact that they're taken off between, it's fine, but it'll show you guys exactly where you need to set up.
Just because when we first start the day, 27 12 by 12 squares, it's not exactly obvious where you need to go. So having those is a nice visual cue. You had a question, Josh?
Yeah, after the end of the day, let's just say Thursday, Friday, obviously not Saturday in the circumstances, are teams allowed to take their robots back to their respective schools if they need to pair, or do they have to stay at the competition?
I mean, I don't think we have a rule.
No, you can take them back, you can work in someone's garage, you can go back to your school, you can do whatever.
There's been robots that leave and come back completely different.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is there gonna be like some sort of like diagram of the gym, maybe like outside the gym, showing where everyone squares so that people don't have to walk around and
Yes.
find their
We will
nearest
have
square?
people guiding you, you'll be
Should
sent
when
a diagram
when
of
CRC
exactly,
Hub should be able to answer those questions.
you'll be sent a diagram of exactly
And the
where.
booths are in chronological order.
So if you walk in the gym and you see 1, and then to your left is 27, and you're, say, 13, you're probably in the middle over there somewhere.
Okay, continuing Friday morning, we'll have the preliminary rounds of robot construction and the kiosk. So those are all done at your kiosk, as well as the robot design from Thursday. So those are all done at your kiosk. The judges will come to you. Keep in mind and we'll go through that in presentation skills, keep in mind the time limit that you have on presentations.
Keep it concise.
Afternoon and evening, so again, the games continue. And in the afternoon into kind of the early part of the evening, we have the final rounds for robot design, robot construction, and the kiosk. So if you are in the top 4 of your pool from preliminary rounds, you'll be told by one of the CRC volunteers that you have made it to the finals, and we will give you the time at which you have to present in the finals. And in the evening of the Friday, the competition, programming competition comes to an end as well. And you'll get all of that information within the next few weeks. Yeah. Any questions on Friday? Okay.
And I think you will be getting a schedule as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. Saturday. So basically what happens at the end of Friday is it places you for the day after. So depending on how you've ranked by the end of the day Friday, it basically tells you what time you have to come in on Saturday. So if you've placed within the first set of schools, then you could be automatically placed into the finals, into the semifinals or into the quarterfinals.
Which means you only have to come in, say, around noon or even 1.
Yeah. If you are not placed within those higher ranking schools, you automatically get put into what we call the kickoff rounds or les rondes éliminatoires. It's basically your chance to get into the quarterfinals. So you'll play a few more heats to increase your score, and then the first set of schools that have the greatest score will go on to the quarterfinals, and you get eliminated, obviously, as you go along, as is a competition. In the afternoon of Saturday, there is the dismantling of your kiosks. Very important, and it is a rule in the kiosk section of the rulebook. You cannot dismantle your kiosk until you are told by CRC to dismantle your kiosk. The reason being is we have a lot of visitors that come in at the end of the afternoon on Saturday to watch the final games, and then the kiosk area is completely cleared out and they don't actually get to see your work. That's not to say that you're going to be dismantling your kiosk at 9 o'clock at night, but you do need to wait for our go ahead. Usually it's in the late afternoon, like 4 o'clock. Yeah, 3-4 o'clock will tell you you can dismantle your kiosk, but still you have to wait for our go.
That's also for safety concerns, because if there's people taking things apart, and a lot of people, they bring their kids and things like that, or little siblings and children running around while walls are falling down is not a good choice.
And then in the evening, after the final games, we have a banquet because you guys need to eat. So the details will be sent to all of the teachers in the coming days. But you have a choice. You don't have to eat with the banquet food. You can go and get your own food. But we do offer food at the cost of the schools. And then after that, there's the award ceremony. So that's where we give away all of the prizes, participant prizes, awards, recognitions, so on and so forth.
Small note about the banquet. This is one of those opportunities to have fun and be social. Don't just sit with your school. Mingle, have fun, exchange contacts. Who knows, you might learn how to build a robot better than you did this year.
Any questions about Saturday? No?
Also, just for clarification, the first part of Saturday, the elimination round, was previously known as repêchage. So just in case anybody got confused there.
That brings us to the end of the competition prep. So we hope you're all prepared for the competition in this slide. And all of the presentations will be available after this workshop.
Breathe, make a list, drink some water, make sure you stay alive.
Yeah.
How many teams are going to be in the playoffs? Well,
In the finals?
yeah,
4.
well, quarterfinals,
I
semifinals,
think
and
it's
finals in general.
I think it's 8, 6, and 4.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that, but
It goes from like a top 16 to top 8 to top 6 to top 4.
Okay.
You want to be in that top 4.
But even if you're not, you've still played a good game.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll take maybe a 5-ish minute break, and then we'll come back for the presentation skills for whoever wants to stay.